7 News will know when our local cherry blossom trees are expected to be in peak bloom. And you're taking a live look at the trees along the Tidal Basin. This is one of the most popular sites in D.C. to see the cherry blossoms when they are in full bloom. And we're counting down the days to the March 20th kickoff of the National Cherry Blossom Festival. Well, this morning at 11 o'clock, the festival and the National Park Service will be announcing their peak bloom prediction ahead of the kickoff. And 7 News will bring that announcement to you live as it happens at WJLA.com and also in our free mobile app. Of course, millions of people are expected to flock to the district once again this year to see the beautiful springtime display. But this is really more than just a tourist attraction. We can actually learn a lot about the health of the planet from these trees and when they bloom. And joining me today to help us read the tree leaves is Theresa Crimmins, the director of the USA National Phenology Network. So Theresa, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with the science of it all. Can you explain briefly what phenology is and how you use it to forecast the cherry blossom peak bloom period?
Absolutely. So phenology it's an old-fashioned term, actually. Most people don't necessarily recognize it, but it represents a phenomenon that absolutely we all pay attention to. It technically refers to when those recurring seasonal events that we have happen in plants and animals actually occur. And so the cherries flowering on those really iconic trees in the Tidal Basin is a perfect example of a phenological event. But we see phenological events in our yards all the time, too. And the reason why we pay attention to them is what really shapes when those events occur. And again, the cherries in the Tidal Basin are such a great example of this, is what local conditions have been like, whether it's been warm or cool, and whether the days are longer or shorter, or how wet it's been.
All right, so, we're expecting to hear the dates of the peak bloom from the National Park Service this year. What are some of those indicators that are going to tell us when the trees will bloom?
So different plants actually respond to different conditions. Cherries in particular are very sensitive to the warmth. A lot of species actually that are active in the spring are very responsive to whether it's been warm or cool. Cherry trees are a little special in that they also care about whether it was cool over the winter. And this particular year, you didn't have any problem at all achieving sufficient chill for those trees. And so that's good, because when the trees are not exposed to sufficient chill, it can actually slow down and kind of diminish the flower production. That shouldn't be a problem this year. And instead, they're paying attention to the warmth. And while there was not a lot of warmth happening in your part of the world earlier, a few weeks ago, this recent warmth has had lots to do with it. And so as long as it continues to stay warm, those trees should respond really wonderfully.
All right, well, we're keeping our fingers crossed that things will stay warm, but you never know in the spring. So what does history tell us about the bloom dates?
So what's really cool is because they are so special and so visible, lots of people have been paying attention to that event for a long time. We have a really good record of when the trees have flowered, both here again in the DC area and in other parts of the world, Japan in particular. And when we look at when the trees peaked their flowering in historical years and compare those to more current years, we can begin to see really clear patterns where, although the timing of flowering varies from one year to the next, there's actually a very clear trend of that event inching earlier and earlier in recent decades. And the pattern of inching earlier aligns pretty clearly with the dawn of the industrial period, where we started to put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And global climate change as well. So now
Exactly.
there are some indicator trees that I know the Park Service pays very close attention to. And tell us what they can tell us.
So those indicator trees are the ones that open flower the earliest. And when those individuals start to have their buds break, it's basically a signal that the folks that track them can use to predict when the peak bloom is likely to occur. They're looking for that very first bud burst, and then they have a calculation that they can utilize to estimate when peak bloom will be reached, which is when 70% of the flowers are open across the whole region.
So it's really a best guess, but once the trees do start to bud, could another big blast of cold air really set them back?
Yes, freezing events in particular are especially problematic because those flower buds are really sensitive. And so freezing events can decimate the blooms because once those buds have been damaged, the trees won't put on another batch this year. We have to wait till next year. High winds can be another problem. Again, those tissues are so sensitive, and so anything that really stresses them out can be hard on them. And those flowers, they're really delicate. They really only last for about a week or so. And so, yes, fingers crossed that it's just mild, warm weather, and you can enjoy a really wonderful event this year.
Yeah, and a long season of cherries, blossom trees in bloom. We can't wait to see that sea of pink along the Tidal Basin this year. Thank you, Theresa Crimmins. She is the director of the USA National Phenology Network. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.